Welcome to Methodantics, where we investigate dusty ideas. This is a podcast for the people that have always had questions about worship and what's in the service and what are all these fancy words and images and things that maybe you think that you should have known by now or that everybody else around you knows. And maybe you don't, and that's okay, because I often do not, and I am Justin Bair, the Associate Director of Worship and Music at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Houston. And I sometimes don't know why I'm the Associate Director of Worship and Music, because I have lots of questions, but this other guy has all of the answers. And so I just sit on his couch and ask him questions, and he answers them, and I feel better about who I am as a person.
Well, he couldn't show up today, so I'm here, Sid Davis, and I'm the Director of Music and Fine Arts at St. Luke's United Methodist Church, and have the joy of working with Justin Bair. And as I've said many times, nothing has more lives than a question that goes unasked. So we're trying to put some of that to rest for you and address some things that you may have always wondered about. I too wonder about a lot of things. I don't always have the answers, but I can look them up. So that's what we're here to help with today. And our question today, Justin, is what?
Why do we worship on Sundays? We've got a lot of options, at least 7 by my count.
Wow. 7. How did they come up with that number? Yeah. It's true. We often go about, I think particularly in this country, thinking we're the common denominator and things have always been the way they are and are the way they should be. And sometimes questions like, why do we worship on Sundays, don't even get thought of necessarily, much less asked. So that's what we're dealing with today. I know that for me, Bishop Will Willimon has been a huge information source over the years as I've taught about worship and learned about worship, because I was not raised in the United Methodist Church, as I've said before. And his books have helped me understand the basics about many things concerning worship. And he has a book that I've turned to many times over the years called With Glad and Generous Hearts. And I went back to that source. I probably used this to teach as early as 1980 or 81. It's an old book, it's been around a long time, but the truths are there. And for me, as said by Bishop Willimon in this book, the earliest Jews had no intention of splitting from the synagogue. They were still faithful attenders of the synagogue on their Sabbath, starting on Friday night and on Saturday. Then they would, on Sunday afternoon after work, because Sunday was a work day, they would attend their Christian services, which were in each other's homes. And after their first day of work on Sunday, they would gather together and have a worship service. Pretty soon, that relationship began to be strained, as you can imagine, of the Jews that thought the Messiah had come and the Jews that did not believe the Messiah had come. And they were actually exiled from the synagogue. And so Sunday worship was their worship. And that's how that began. There are other aspects to that. Justin, what do you think?
It's really interesting because one of the reasons I love a topic like this is because it goes really way back. In fact, like all the way back to how this all started. So much of what we do, like last week we talked about paraments, and that's generally speaking in the history of the church, a fairly new thing. And this is something that goes all the way back to the beginning of that. And we just assume with so much of what we do that it's just the way that it's always been done. And because of that, like we tend to take it for granted, or we tend to just glaze over it instead of wondering and considering, is this, how did they do this before? How did this look before? I've been in church traditions and in churches themselves where the idea of, our Sundays are really full and our building can't get any bigger. And can we go to a Sunday evening service, or could we go to a Saturday service? And that's just absolute sacrilege, right? Because we've always done it this way. And there's so much that's protected in church because we've always done it this way. But I think it's important to remember, I think about the verse and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but he says, "Do not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing," which to me was like, does he mean some are in the habit of giving up meeting together, or are some in the habit of meeting together and don't give that up? But like if they essentially converting to a new religion or this new sect of Judaism, if they left everything that they had always known in their families, that's an extremely isolating way to bring this new way into the world. And so to me, it makes a lot of sense for them to continue in their own traditions, because that's the way they had always done it. But then to add this kind of a new element, and then for it to very naturally just kind of split off. It wasn't like, all of the Romans or Jews or whomever were the first Christians woke up on Sunday morning and put on their best togas for the Lord and
Toga and tie.
marched into the catacombs or temple or whatever. Like I think it's so good for us to think how to challenge, I guess, why do we do it this way? And we've been doing it this way for so long. How did they do it?
It's like this is maybe a strange analogy. The Wesleys had no intention of splitting from the Anglican Church. That was not their intent. They just wanted to reform it. The Jews were still Jews, and they worshiped in the synagogue as long as they could. Now, it did become a driver for them once they were worshiping on Sundays, that Sunday was the logical day to worship, because that's the day Christ rose from the dead. And consequently, we're prone to say every Sunday is a little Easter. Even the Sundays in the depths of Lent are a commemoration of Christ's resurrection. Every Sunday is a little Easter. So there's that as well for the Jews.
Yeah, it seems to make the most sense. And I remember in my tradition being, I was just always confused as to when the Sabbath was, and how that lined up with like what was the actual day of rest in Scripture. Like when God created the heavens and the earth, did he also create Mondays? Because we know everybody hates Mondays, but I don't, I feel like that was maybe a little more of a natural process, kind of a natural growing to this standard, which was probably a Roman standard of these days. And so I remember thinking, well, like Saturday is kind of like a restful day, but I remember being told that Sunday was the Sabbath. But then I also read in the Bible they're not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath. But then when I was a kid growing up in church, like my parents were always the last ones to leave the church, and it was exhausting, and we were in all the activities, and then we'd come back that afternoon for all the other youth activities, and Sundays were an exhausting day. And I was like, this isn't the Sabbath for sure. And then taking Spanish in high school, and I knew that Sábado was Saturday, and that just confused the issue like even more. And so I knew going into a discussion like this, like how does this line up with Sabbath traditions?
That's right. And for the people who dabble maybe a little bit in Latin that we're used to in terms of musical pieces, especially, we know Lord God of Sabaoth, and it looks like Sabbath, very close, an extra vowel, but that actually means Lord God of the armies or the hosts. So I think Sabbath can be a fuzzy term for us in the 21st century. And now I can say, you know what, I'm going to take Thursday off and I'm just going to have a Sabbath, which I don't do very often, but a lot of people say that in our modern culture. I'm going to have a Sabbath, which is true. It's a day of rest and recouping your energy, and that is true.
So I think too, a part of this conversation, this is sort of like subcategory B here, is like what it looks like on Sunday mornings, and why especially it's Sunday mornings. Like you said, they'd go Saturday or Sunday night. It was their first day of the week, first day of work, because they already had their Sabbath. And then they'd go to church. I mean, like I just compare that to what we would do now, have a full day of work on a terrible Monday, and then have like your once per week service on a Monday night. That sounds terrible first of all. But then for us, like Sunday mornings are supposed to be chill. I'm pretty sure there's like a Motown song about easy on some easy like Sunday morning. Is that right? I don't even know if it's Motown.
That's good.
And I remember hearing, and I'm not going to be able to quote this, that we would meet, especially on a Sunday morning, because as we're developing our own traditions in an American frontier sort of itinerant evangelical Christianity, all of this is moving westward. All of this is, everybody lives on farms. And when you go to a church, it was all of the farms around you. Everybody comes to the church. And you can't meet first thing on a Sunday morning, because that's when you have to milk the cows. You got to feed the chickens. You got to mend the fence. You got to take care of your stuff and your people. And then once everybody's set, everybody's fed, then you can dress yourselves up and take the family to church.
That's right. And it wasn't, hop in the car and you're at the church in 10 or 15 minutes either. You hitched up the horses or the oxen, and it might have been quite a trip into town. That's true.
My oxen was a Honda Odyssey.
Honda oxen.
Yes. Goes a little bit faster, but it breaks down about as often.
So do we have a final question for the day? We like to ask questions at the end. Actually, I think this is mine to do, isn't it? That we have a question in hopes that you might get to know us just a little bit better. Sort of a completely off topic, certainly nothing about worship, but about us personally. And our question today is bedtime. What time do you go to bed? I've always been a night owl, especially for my early days in the music business. I was up late a lot. So I've always been a night owl. And I think the pandemic has only made that worse, because it's nothing for me to head to bed at 1:30 in the morning, and only then because I'm embarrassed to stay up any later. So I don't take a whole lot of sleep, but I do go to bed very late. And I love staying up late. I enjoy it. I don't want to go to bed before that. Justin, how about you? I don't think we share that.
Do you nap?
Nope. I mean, I might doze off in my chair for 5 minutes, but I don't really nap.
Yeah, that's the dream. So like the answer to this question for me is really two questions, because it's what time would I like to go to bed every night, and then like what time do I actually go to bed?
You have children.
Really, ever since, as long as I can remember, I've always just been a kind of a sleepy person, and my excuse for that is that I was a gymnast growing up, and I would wake up early and go to school and throughout my whole school day, and then I would leave from school and go directly to gymnastics, and I would spend 4 to 4.5 hours at the gym every evening. I'd come home, eat dinner, probably do a little bit of homework, and then just absolutely die. And that was every night for most of my childhood. So maybe I blame it on that. And then also, having taught public school for 7 years, that's a very, very exhausting job.
Exhausting. And
the number of times that like my classes would all be dismissed and I didn't have any after school rehearsals, I would just be sitting at my computer like this, trying to read and answer emails and just doze right off. Just having exhausting jobs or whatever. But I could pretty easily go to bed about 8 or 8:30 every night.
Couldn't do it.
The main reason I don't is because I like my wife and I want to remain married to her. And she is also a night owl. She would like to start everything that she wants to do for the day at about 10 p.m.
Perfect. I think that makes perfect sense.
It's not okay. The night has begun, okay? And that's when you sleep. So we try to meet in the middle a little bit. She would probably, maybe not quite as late as you, but she would probably like to go to bed around like 11 or midnight. We meet in the middle. It's usually somewhere between about 10 and 11, and I use every single bit of that every night.
Well, my bedtime is complete proof that I was never a gymnast. I am totally happy at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I did. Nora, my 4-year-old, goes to bed about 8 o'clock, 8:30 or so, depending on how she's feeling. And just a few nights ago, I was trying to put her to bed, and we're trying to encourage her to be independent. And So I went to her room and I lay down on her bed while I was waiting for her to get ready, which meant she needed to go to the bathroom and brush her teeth. And she was just taking her absolute sweet time. I think she was brushing like a bristle at a time in her teeth. And she may have brushed her teeth 4 times. I don't know. I fell asleep and I woke up to her maybe an inch from my face and shocked awake. And I said, "Oh my God." She said, "What's wrong, Daddy?" And I said, you're not supposed to do that to people. Okay. Somebody might accidentally kill you. Don't do that anymore. So yeah,
I had trouble sleeping that night.
Yeah, I think so. And those little naps, those like 8 p.m. naps for 10 minutes are what help get me to an acceptable bedtime for the rest of society. So if you want to contact us, and you very well should, if you have questions that you would like for us to answer, or at least Sid to answer and I can banter about, you should email us. My email is jbair@stlukesmethodist.org. You can email Sid, sdavis@stlukesmethodist.org. We would love to hear from you and see what are the things that interest you on a Sunday morning. And if you've pointed out in the bulletin or looked at the chancel and said, "What even is that?" we would like to help you worship in a little bit deeper way.
Absolutely. Ask away.
Ask away. Okay, that's all for us. Have a good week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.